Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to this community webinar. So I'll hand over to Jim and John to let them introduce themselves. Jim, do you want to kick off and introduce yourself to the attendees?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Burtoft. I live in State College, Pennsylvania. I've been working with Imperva for 5 or 6 years now. Started with the Cloud Raft and the database side. And then we started with the bot. John and I started working closely together and kind of melding that bot detection with the Imperva Cloud Raft. And it's been a successful venture ever since.
Cool. I'll go next. Yeah. This is John Cosgrove talking to you from a beautiful day here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Came over to Imperva by way of the acquisition of Distill Networks back in 2019. So continued on with Imperva, focusing on advanced bot protection and how we rolled that out and integrated the technology from Distill into Imperva's stack. Happy to answer your questions today. I'm currently the senior product manager for advanced bot protection, our account takeover module, as well as our client side protection. So we'll focus on advanced bot protection today, but do reach out if you have questions about those other products, and I can help out.
So all complaints go to John.
That's right. And then all the no's come from me as well. So.
Oh, I'm glad you guys have worked out that dynamic ahead of the session, so everyone knows what to expect.
Yeah. If there's something we can do, I'll say yes. If not, then no.
Perfect. Okay, well, guys, I've just popped a wee message in the chat to remind you where it is. The chat's right there, so pop your questions in, and we'll be feeding them through to John and Jim throughout the session. So if it suits, guys, will I kick off with the poll? Is that how we're going to do this? Yeah. Okay. So we've just heard about Jim and John. We know all about them. Now we want to hear about who else is in the room here with us today. So I am going to do a quick poll to find out a little bit more about you all. And so here is the first one. Okay. So let us know what's your company's biggest concern about bots. So you're picking the biggest concern here. So we're giving you one option. I'm sure you all are thinking about a lot of these things, but what's really bugging you these days, keeping you up at night? Let's find out. Okay, yeah, we're about a third of the way through. I'm always aware that the visitors can't see these polls. I'm watching it populate here, but you guys can't see it. So the suspense is unreal. Okay, so we're about halfway. I'm going to give this another, say, 5-10 seconds, and then we're gonna close this poll.
For me, it's like American Idol, right? It's like, oh, credential stuffing's ahead. Oh, wait, web scraping's coming up.
Vote now, people. Okay.
Vote for your favorite.
Or least favorite in this case.
Yeah, least favorite.
Yeah. Okay. In 3, 2, 1, I'm ending it, and I'm sharing the results so everyone can see these results now. What do you think, guys?
Yep.
As expected?
Yeah, that's pretty good. The credential stuffing we are seeing everywhere, and we'll talk about that a little bit today with anytime we're talking about ATO or the account takeover, that's always the credential stuffing. And the nice thing is everybody's credential stuffing problem looks very similar. And so the ATO is targeted for that. And then web scraping. Yep. Is another
I was a little surprised to see web scraping in the top spot. Usually, I think one of carding or inventory abuse or account takeover is number 1, 2, and 3. But web scraping is a general, right? It's a big general problem. So it has a lot of flavors compared to account takeover or credential stuffing, like Jim said, is pretty commonly the same attack vector. So yeah, I can see how more people would have general web scraping as a concern.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry, Jim.
No, that's good.
All good. Well, I go ahead and run this second one. See the next question that we have here. Let's see. Yeah, we're just trying to make you guys do the work this time around. So
it's pretty easy seminar so far. Yeah, gotta admit.
Don't speak too soon, Jim. Don't speak too soon. Okay. So everyone can see that okay? Have you experienced any of these scenarios? So we're being kind here and letting you pick as many as you want. Well, up to 4, obviously, but yeah, so let us know what ones you have experienced and we can get a sense of what appears to be most common for the people in the room. Okay, we're only a quarter of the way through, so I'm going to give that another wee minute while we're watching it populate.
And I will say, Sarah, we purposefully left off server load because yeah, sometimes you get a call that, hey, this server is unexpectedly overloaded, but that would probably go with the login pages if it happened to be. But like we've had some customers where someone was scraping their site and they knew it because the database administrators called them up and said, every day at such and such a time, the database usage skyrockets.
All right. Okay. Okay, I'm going to end this poll and share the results so everyone can see. Joke. What do you think, guys? Is that as expected, John?
I'd say so. What I really wanted to hear from the audience was that last one about the fraud department. It's interesting how in our line of business, we're expected to do certain things, but then also work cross-functionally with other business partners. And obviously we want to be sensitive to that and provide value when our users have to do that. So that helps inform product direction. So thanks everybody for letting us know about that one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if anyone in the audience wants to elaborate on anything in the chat. If they find that that's a particular challenge for them, the cross-functional element or anything like that, do feel free to sort of let us know a bit more about your situation. Jim, have you anything to say on those results there?
Yeah, I think it's good. With the login pages, I know I'll often see I can tell when a company I work with is having a bot problem because I will often use a generic username like a J Smith or a Glenn Smith or something like that. Because at first I thought, oh well, it's not Jim Burtoft, so they can't track it to me. But it turns out that J Smith or Glenn Smith is one of the common usernames that they always try to attack, and so my username would always get locked out.
Yeah. And
so excessive lockouts from users is also another good indicator that you have a problem.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay.
And Sarah, real quick, I do want to mention, guys, feel free to put those questions in the chat. You will not interrupt us. We've got Sarah and Kay are going to be tracking those and putting them up for us. So as you think of stuff, just feel free to type it in.
Yeah, good shout, Jim. Absolutely, throw them in there. We're mediators, if you will. So go ahead and pop them in there. Right, and with that, we'll kick off with some of the pre-submitted questions that we had. So John, I'm going to throw this one at you. How do I know if I have a bot problem?
Well, it's kind of funny. You can answer this really, really broadly and really, really specifically. I think with the scenarios that we seeded in this second poll question, those are absolutely the signs of having a bot problem at a microscopic level. But at a macroscopic level, I like to say, do you make money with your website? Is your website an integral part of your business? If the answer is yes, then you probably do have a bot problem because there's value there for somebody to take advantage of your business. So it might not happen every day. It might not be happening right now. It could happen in the future. But I'm glad you're here on this webinar to talk about ABP, to learn a little bit more about it, because it's really a matter of when, not if you're not already under attack. So if you're under attack, common things you see can be in that poll question, can see server load, customer complaints. And you as a security professional on the security team might not always hear about it. It might be a different part of the business that has the problem. So working with your peers and asking them questions and that sort of thing can go a long way.
Yeah, and John, I'll add, it's kind of like the question we used to get with Cloud Raft, where someone would be like, well, how do I know if I'm being attacked on the internet? Well, if you're on the internet, you're being attacked by something. The real question is, how much do I care and am I protected, right? And so you got to know what's coming in. And like John said, at some point, if you've got anything other than a brochure, marketing website, especially if you have any kind of a login, it's going to get hit sooner or later. The big question is, how much does it impact your business? For instance, I was working with one customer. They did a lot of B2B orders, and so the people that were connecting with them were other customers. They were sending out POs. A lot of times they had net 30 days, and they had a credit card on there for convenience. And so when someone started stuffing credit cards in there, they just said, we'll just disable the credit card option and send POs out to our customers, because for them, it wasn't a big impact. They were getting hit, but it didn't impact their business. So that's the big question, I think, is if something goes down, if your website goes down, if this functionality, if people can't log in, how much do you care?
That's great.
And most of us care a lot because we're here today.
Yeah. Here's hoping. Yeah. Okay, so the next question came on from a community user. Thanks for that, Justin Kate. Thank you. How does advanced bot protection determine whether a client is a good or bad bot? Over to John.
Yeah, I'll take it. So I like to say there's more than one way to catch a bot, and we try to do all of them that we can imagine. There are concrete differences between the software connecting to Imperva, to your website, between you and I with our web browsers, and say automation software run by a bot operator. So one, we look for those differences. How do we find those differences? Well, there's a bunch of different ways, whether it's HTTP headers, the TLS fingerprint, stuff we get back from a JavaScript interrogation of the browser. They all help give away the software that the bot operators use, without necessarily letting them know that they've been given away. It's always possible as well that there are bots that are completely custom. Nobody's ever seen them before. They're not on anyone's list. They're coming from residential proxy networks, so they look absolutely human. But what differentiates these bots and what we do to try to identify their behavior is purpose-built behavioral analysis. So whether that is asking for an inordinate amount of data through various web pages, and the counts of those web pages, or whether it's asking for the same web page over and over and over and over again, the behavior between, again, you and I on a site, purchasing a product, logging in, submitting our credit card or using our gift card points, is very different from what we see at scale with the abuse that bot operators are trying to do. Remember that it's a human using this software for some kind of financial or other time monetary gain. And that's the approach that we take to really determine human from bot.
Yeah. And I think it's important that there's what you might think to be a good bot, someone else might disagree with. And there might be some bots that you care about and some bots that you don't. So one of the big things that we do with both the advanced bot protection and the Cloud Raft is we give you the option to have some classifications where we say, hey, we recognize this is a Google bot. And if you want to let Google index your site, we'll let them through. And if you don't, for some reason, then we'll stop that. So that classification lets you make that determination. Because again, in some cases, if you're, having Black Friday come up, you may decide, I don't care how good the bot is. I don't want them coming through because that's the last thing I need on my server on Thursday.
Yeah. Good point. I think I missed the cue there that it was good bot versus bad bot. So certainly the pre-approved list of scrapers, like Jim mentioned, One thing we've also added recently is a categorization of networks. So if you're an existing customer, you might be familiar with our concept of known violator data centers. And that is a pre-built list of data center traffic around the world that we see very little human traffic from and mostly automation from. We've added a subset of those called cloud service providers. So as more businesses, more startups, more even small companies go to offer services online, cloud service providers like Google, Amazon, Azure, right? Even Oracle Cloud are used to maybe have a gray area of usage from them with bots. But there are also lots of humans coming from them with legitimate VPN services and that sort of thing. So it's another layer to investigate and maybe combine in some rules. And we give that to you out of the box.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things people talk about, and we'll get into this a little bit with, I can write some of my own rules to do certain things. And one of the things that we do specifically with the advanced bot feature is give you those pre-classifications to help you with that filtering. Because in a lot of cases, if you've got a consumer facing website, you may be able to say, I don't want anything from a cloud provider coming to me because they're either some kind of a bot or some kind of an automated process, or maybe there's some kind of a VPN endpoint that I don't want to come in anyways. However, all of our infrastructure is built in Azure. And so we want to we don't want to apply those same restrictions to Azure. So again, having that classification and that flexibility is pretty key, and there for you to customize.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, guys. Jim, I'm going to throw this one at you as well while you're in the flow.
All right.
What is the difference between rate limiting in Cloud WAF versus ABP?
Yeah. So for Cloud WAF customers, and I do want to make clear for everybody on the call, we're talking today about the Imperva advanced bot protection features. And a lot of those are available to you whether you're using Cloud WAF or not. So I know one of the questions we'll get to a little bit later is, can I use this if I'm not using Cloud WAF? So whether you're using on-premise WAF or whether you're using an AWS Lambda function or an F5 in front of you, you can still use the Imperva bot service. However, we have it built into our Cloud WAF, so it makes it really easy to use. And a lot of our existing Cloud WAF customers are adding this advanced bot protection feature. And so the question is, I could do rate limiting before. Right now, if you're a Cloud WAF customer and you don't have advanced bot protection, you can set up a rate limit that says, if someone's hitting this URL and they're hitting it more than X number of times, I want to block them, capture them, log them, whatever. And so how does that differ between some of the rate limiting that we can do in ABP? And the quick answer is that in Cloud WAF, it is a very blunt tool. Our recommendation is for Cloud WAF that you use it more for server uptime. If you know that this server can only handle 1,000 queries per second, then that's where you put it, because you want to make sure that it's not getting more than X number of queries back there. However, the big difference is that in Cloud WAF, it is IP related. And in ABP, we can dig a little bit deeper than that. And so the challenge becomes in Cloud WAF, if you're doing a rate limiting where you say, hey, nobody should be logging in more than 5 times in a minute on my site. So I'm going to put a five times per minute rate limit on Cloud WAF. The problem is that that's IP based. And there's a lot of situations where people are sharing IPs. So if you're connected in through the Imperva VPN, we're going to go out through one of the Imperva IP addresses, and you're going to have a bunch of people on the Imperva network all coming from the same IP. So if every one of those guys tried to log in, we might hit more than 5 per minute, even though each one of us is only logging in 1 or 2 times. If everybody's at a Starbucks coffee shop, they're all going to come from the same IP. A lot of the mobile providers like AT&T will often proxy their request through a proxy on their network. And so you'll see a lot of traffic coming from an AT&T mobile IP address, and you might get more than 5 logins per second because you got more than 5 people logging in, even though each one of those guys never logs in more than 1 or 2 times. On the ABP side, we have the ability to set those limits on a device level, where we can say, even though I see that this is all coming from the same IP address, I recognize that there is this Chrome browser, another Chrome browser, this Firefox guy, and this other, whomever, and we can apply those rate limits individually, where you can say, okay, now I'm more comfortable saying that each individual user should never hit more than 5 times in a minute the login page.
Totally. That's what I was going to kind of key in on, was the difference between IP-based and fingerprint or token-based, which is what ABP uses. And in addition, there's also 3 distinct rate limits inside of advanced bot protection that you can set the limits for and combine with other rules. So there's requests per minute, there's requests per session, and there's session length. So each of those 3 can be combined on different parts of your website and with different user behavior in mind to really fine tune and lock down things in regards to rate limits.
Okay, thank you for that, guys. Next question on the list is, what if I have a site that is not behind Imperva?
Yeah, so we can still help you. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. When we acquired Distill, they had the connector framework where the client comes in from the left-hand side. And it's a little bit more technical diagram than we need, but the client comes in from the left-hand side. It hits something in front of your web server, whether that's F5 and AWS Lambda, Imperva Cloud WAF, Imperva on-premise WAF, etc. And then we send that information off to the Imperva API for the analysis and everything else, and then send back to whatever that connector is in the middle to say, allow it, block it, capture it, etc. And that lets us use the advanced bot protection features for your sites that are not behind a Imperva Cloud WAF. So we did mention if you're an on-premise WAF customer, an Imperva on-premise WAF customer, we can let you use ABP, and it works the same way. It's just with the Cloud WAF, it's integrated, and the control panel for this resides in the Cloud WAF interface. So even if you have an on-premise WAF, you're still going to administer all of the policies and everything else from the central location. If you need to say, hey, I want to start blocking users that do this, you don't need to go hit every one of your endpoints. You just go to the management console in Cloud WAF, change your policy there, and then that gets affected with all the connectors, wherever they happen to be.
Yeah, and there, just for completeness sake, there are connectors for Cloudflare workers, AWS Lambda at Edge, Fastly, Nginx, and F5. So there are some version requirements on some of those connectors. Refer to our documentation for specifics. But if you don't remember which ones there are and you want to look, they are all in the docs at docs.imperva.com.
And on-premise WAF.
Yes.
Perfect.
Perfect.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, John, I'm going to give this one to you. What does it look like to implement the SDK?
Sure. Yeah. I don't think we've talked about the SDK, the mobile SDK in.
So John, what is the SDK? Can you tell me about that?
I missed a cue. Oh no.
Okay. It's really important to protect all the avenues that a bot operator can send requests to your site, right? So you've got your web page. Great. Well, what if your website is driven by an API and your web page simply displays those results? So you could write a bot to scrape web pages and interact with the web pages, or you could write a bot to interact directly with the API. Okay, well, we've got both of those covered pretty easily with just our protections and how we run our JavaScript and that sort of thing. But what about mobile? With mobile apps, they communicate exclusively with APIs. And there's no web pages normally to interact with. And the challenges that we use on the web in the form of JavaScript don't really work with native mobile apps. So we developed a mobile SDK to integrate with our customers' mobile apps, which effectively does the same thing of interrogating the client and looking for those telltale signs of automation that I mentioned earlier. In the case of mobile apps, it's usually things like debuggers that are attached and trying to read things from memory, rooted devices, and jailbroken devices, device farms that are up in the cloud and not using, it's not a real user with a real phone in your real app, and emulators, desktop emulators, that sort of thing. So if you, again, the thesis is if you can find the signs of automation, or you can find the signs of at scale bot behavior, you can identify that traffic and control it. So that's why the SDK exists. And what does it look like to implement the SDK is pretty straightforward. There's a couple extra function calls that you would call. Of course, you'd import the SDK into your mobile app project, call a couple extra functions, add a header to all your requests, and you're done. We take care of all the hard parts of caching the header, making sure it's encrypted, making sure it's valid, retrying on failures, all that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty straightforward implementation that would take one developer, easily done within one sprint if you're kind of working on that kind of timeline. And again, the documentation's all over at docs.imperva.com under advanced bot protection if you want to see the specifics.
That's super. Thank you very much for that. I'm aware we've got lots of great questions coming in. I might just hit with one of the live questions and then we'll come back up to some of the pre-submitted questions, if that's okay, guys. Just very quickly here, Richard asks, what additional protection do we get from ABP versus BP? For example, what is the delta?
Yeah. So,
you want to take it, Jim?
Yeah. So we have this. We get this question a lot because we've been talking about bot protection, especially on the Cloud WAF side, for years. And what we have to realize is that there's different levels of bots. So what we used to do in the old days is you'd have a simple bot where someone would say, I need to make this call and I need to make it 100 times. And I will do that by using a curl script or some kind of software that just sends the command, and waits for the command. And we could identify these processes and distinguish and say, you know what, this looks like curl, it doesn't look like Firefox. And there's a couple different ways we do that on the network side. And one of the ways that we would do that is we would give them a little bit of JavaScript, because browsers could handle JavaScript pretty well. Things like curl and some of these scripts didn't know what to do with it. And so we could say, oh, you can't handle JavaScript, you must be an automated process. And we now call that client classification on the Cloud WAF side. So what we used to call bot protection in Cloud WAF, we now call client classification, because that's what we're really doing. We're looking and saying, are you a browser or are you something else? The problem is that we have this new generation of bots, which we call advanced bot protection. So this is one of the problems with the name. It isn't that our bot protection is more advanced, it's that the bots are more advanced. So it's the advanced bots that we're protecting you from with advanced bot protection. Because these advanced bots are not just a simple script that's sending the same command over and over again. These are development testing environments where they're taking something like headless Chrome that you might use to test your website, and they're using it to access the website and to scrape this information. So a lot of the old techniques that we used to use, like say, hey, here's a cookie, can you give it back? Here's a JavaScript, can you give it back? Don't work because they're running a full browser. And so it has all of these browser capabilities and all of the fingerprinting things that we didn't work. So with advanced bot protection, we take advantage of that fact and we say, you know what, since you can run a JavaScript, here's a bigger piece of JavaScript that tells us a lot about your environment. Go ahead and run that. If you can't run it, that tells us something. If you do run it, it tells us a lot more about your environment. And so the client classification, if you're in Cloud Raft, is a great starting place. But once you start getting hit with some of those more advanced attacks and the advanced bots, then you're going to need to move to some of the advanced bot protection.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that are only available in advanced bot protection. So I mentioned the mobile SDK in the previous answer. Right. That is the de facto way recognized by Gartner to protect traffic from mobile apps against your APIs. And that's only available with ABP. In addition, our account takeover module is only available within ABP. So that's a great purpose-built tool to protect your users. And regular client classification, plain old rate limiting. I'll go back to my answer on how do I know if I have a bot problem? Well, are you spending all of your time playing IP whack-a-mole and tuning a rate limit? If you are, there are better tools for that job.
Yeah. And client classification still does its job, right? It's just that the bad guys have moved on. However, for a lot of our customers that are using advanced bot protection, they're still blocking a lot of the bots at first using client classification. It's just a refining technique that they can get the more advanced guys with the advanced bot protection.
Okay, super. Okie doke. The next one, actually, I heard John mention APIs there. So you can tell me if you've already answered this. Can I use ABP to protect my APIs?
Totally. Yeah. And I saw a question from Michael in the chat. How do you deal with modern web apps that are RESTful? It's all the same to us. So with any sort of API that is built for the web or built for mobile, we have a way of checking to make sure that on the web, our JavaScript is executed and the token that's produced as part of that is valid. It's not expired, wasn't generated with automation offline, wasn't replayed from a value stored, a week ago, stuff like that. With mobile, we use the mobile SDK in the same vein, like I mentioned earlier. And for even single page apps, there's at least one full HTML page that's served for every session, right? So there's our chance to get in and to run our analysis. If you get into the realm of, well, I want to throw a CAPTCHA if there's a false positive, that's absolutely doable. Might require a little bit of a tweak in your application to look for our response on some of these API calls if it ends up being a block, but you can still do that. And there's one other point I was going to raise. It just left me, but Jim, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that.
Yeah, I think with the modern web apps, it's useful to be able to distinguish the web application traffic versus the mobile application traffic versus the expected API automation traffic, right? And again, like John said, the web application we can distinguish. The mobile app is great for the SDK, and then the API, we have to treat that a little bit differently because we're expecting automation there. And so if you can segregate that, or if we can have some kind of a rule to be able to say, okay, web application traffic we expect here, mobile API traffic we expect here. If you can have them segregated by endpoints or by URLs or domains, that's great. If not, it gets a little trickier. I mean, we can still write the rules, but the rules just get a little more complicated.
Yeah. And I think that was what I did want to mention. Some APIs out there, depending on who you are, what your role is within the company, might be a partner API or a B2B API that is not serving your direct customer traffic. And I think that's what Jim kind of alluded to there. If that API is built for bot interaction, Well, the traffic's already 100% bots. And so that's not an ideal use case for us, but certainly the more B2C focused APIs are the sweet spot.
Thanks for that. Just on Michael's question there, he had a question just before that I think is worth touching on. Does ABP, my goodness, provide an atomic response, for example, block or no, or do you provide a level of confidence that a request is a bot or human?
So Sarah, yeah, I saw a couple of these. Let me share a quick diagram. So this is kind of what I showed before. It's got all the different connectors mentioned. And it's important when we answer that question to understand a little bit about how the advanced bot protection works, because we have the connectors and we have the analysis service, right? For the Cloud Raft users, it doesn't really matter. It still looks like this behind the scenes, right? But for Cloud Raft, it's integrated if you're using on-premise or if you're using one of these other connectors. And I saw one of the questions was, can we buy advanced bot protection separately? Yes, you can. We've got a lot of customers that are doing that. So even if you don't have sites behind an Imperva on-premise WAF or a Cloud WAF, you can still buy it. And essentially, you just install one of these connectors that we provide on one of these platforms in front of your web server, and the question goes off. So to the atomicity question, whether how we decide, the connector is made to be very lightweight. The requests come in, it sends that information, whether it's a cookie or a JavaScript request, off to the Imperva API. The Imperva API sends back either a thumbs up, allow it, thumbs down, block it, or a captcha it. And those are the only three that it'll send back to the connector, right, John?
Well, we've got force identify, which is a little hidden trick in our pocket to force browsers to identify themselves or get no other content.
Yep. And so, but those are the only commands going back to the connector. Why we send those commands is where the policy comes in, and that's where the determination happens. So yes, we talk about a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That's all that goes back to the connector, but that's after the decision has been made at the analysis level. And that's where you have the ability to apply different criteria, because the challenge with a percentage based is, a little bit more about your application, and you'd really want to make those percentages different, right, in different situations. So if we have traffic that's coming from a known violator data center, you want to make sure that those restrictions are a lot more limited, right? I might allow somebody 5 requests for free without identifying themselves, but if they're coming from a known violator data center, I expect them to identify themselves by running the JavaScript the first time, right? Or at a much lower level. However, maybe in your situation, you do have customers that are coming in from these locations, and so we want to relax it a little bit for those known violator data centers. Like we talked about with the cloud providers, if you expect traffic to be coming in from Google or Azure, then you want to treat that a little bit differently. And we can manage that inside the policies instead of just giving what we think is a straight, oh, this is 79% likely to be a bot, right? Okay, and you draw the line at 80. So it really isn't about the percentages, it's more about the attributes and what we recognize about this client. You might want to say, hey, if they're running a recognized automation software, I want to block them no matter where they're coming from. I don't care what score they got. If they're running headless Chrome, there's no reason, unless they're one of my developers coming from these 5 IPs, right? Block it. If they make more than X number of requests, an individual, I don't care if they've got some kid sitting there hitting refresh on the page, I'm going to block them. Because, and so we let you come up with those specific criteria that makes sense for yours. Now, don't get me wrong. We've got a bunch of stuff out of the box that if you say, hey, I just want to have some general protection, we've got some recommended policies that you could turn on, make it nice and easy. But when you get in there and you want to start tuning it, you do it based on the attributes. Sorry, John, that was a little excited.
Yeah. The key, I think, to sum up that question is, while our actions that we recommend are atomic, the policy that gets to those actions is configurable for your risk level. How do you do it based on risk level? Well, we have binary checks, and we can tell you what our confidence is about those checks. But then remember, there's also that behavioral model aspect. And so we have a couple of meta models that give a high, medium, low confidence with things like web scraping or things like account takeover that are easy to say, well, I just want to try high confidence for now. And then maybe you add in medium later.
Yeah. And John, I did want to address, we had a question come up in community about how this works in Imperva if we have multiple gateways on premise, but it's really if we have multiple connectors anywhere on premise. If you remember from that diagram, all of those requests go back to the analysis at Imperva. And so even though they might be coming in and they might get load balanced across multiple gateways, or they might be coming in from different pathways, they're still going to get sent back. So if someone's trying to do, if you have a rate limit rule that gets sent in, that rate limiting gets determined by the analysis API, not by each individual gateway determining their own rate limit. Because remember, each individual gateway or connector only gets that thumbs up or thumbs down back from the analysis, and it's just executing on that. The real brains and the real effort are happening on the Imperva side. And then Michael had the same question, or had a similar question, talking about the multiple gateways. I did want to mention that that for the Imperva Cloud Raft customers, advanced bot protection, for the Imperva on-premise customers, Imperva Cloud Raft, and for the on-premise customers, ABP works, it is not supported in bridged or the old transparent reverse proxy mode. So you pretty much have to be running KRP.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I got that out.
Just take a breath. We're good there. We've got about 15 minutes left, so we're going to hammer through some of these next questions here. Just following up from that question you answered there was from Michael. He had another question, and Michael, you're never greedy when you ask questions. This is what this is all about. Assuming an insert of a cookie and/or JS is required with Gateway to interrogate an end user, Sarah,
it's okay. Jim just answered that one.
Yay! Thank you for cutting me off, John. I really appreciate that. Good. Next one then. Okay, another one that was asked on community beforehand by Tom. Are there any plans to have an API for ABP? For example, creating, updating, removing website groups, policies, directives, and conditions.
Funny you should mention that, Tom. Sorry. John?
Yeah. We just released it. So if you missed it, our fault. We'll make sure it's in the release notes. And it's over on docs.imperva.com. Once you click into ABP, you'll see the API in the left-hand side there that mentions all the sections of the help article. So policies are in there, directives are in there, sites and site groups are in there. As of so sites and stuff were in there back in June, and then the policies and conditions and everything we released last week.
Okay, that's great. And another community pre-submitted one here from CJ. Now, I provided some links to get him started off on this, but you were going to discuss it a bit further. How to quickly eliminate and investigate when a misblock occurs when using ABP.
Right. So assuming that this is kind of a false positive where we have said, this is a bot, we've blocked it, and turns out it's a real user. So usually when this kind of thing happens, someone else tells you about it. right? You've got a customer call center, you've got an employee, you've got somebody is giving you information. Hey, I think your system blocked me. What's critical to know, first off, if it's coming from the call center, make sure you have a good idea that it's actually a real customer. If a bot operator gets blocked, sometimes they'll try to social engineer their way in and say, call in and say, I can't believe you. I've been a customer for 15 years, right? Yeah. And I just need you to whitelist my IP address. And then boom, they're in. So ensure that you do have a good sense that this was a real customer, or obviously an employee. You'll have more information. And then you need some kind of identifier to allow list and create a custom condition to add that identifier to the allow list. There is an investigation dashboard that's helpful, and it has filters on it for time and for IP address. I think user agent is there as well. So if you have, the more information about that you have, you can go in and verify that advanced bot protection was the source of the block. We've got so many security tools these days that sometimes you can blame one and it's not the actual cause. So if you're not absolutely dead sure, first go into the investigation dashboard, put your identifiers in, find out if the system did say block or CAPTCHA or identify, right? And then you can go into your policy and create the appropriate condition, add it to the allow directive, and then that user will be on the allow list.
Yeah. And John, for our Cloud Raft customers, every a bot block is considered a security event just like anything else. And so anytime you have somebody saying, I can't access your website, then you can go start with the Cloud Raft security events and see if they were blocked for any reason, because they could have been coming from a Tor exit node. They might have been coming from a blocked IP, and I'm traveling in the Ukraine and I can't get to your website. So check there first to see if there was a security event, because if they were blocked by advanced bot protection, it will tell you in that one location, just like it will tell you whether they were blocked for an IP reason or because of some other security event. Once you know that it was a block initiated by advanced bot protection, then that investigation dashboard that John mentioned will tell you why, from a policy perspective, it was decided to block, so you can kind of trace through that. But like John said, there's a lot of times customers could be having problems for different reasons. And so you want to look into that again, whether you're using the Cloud Raft or whether you're using one of our other connectors, just to make sure, because, we all know from a security perspective, it always gets blamed on security first. And if you just start doing bot protection, it'll get blamed on that first because that was the latest change, but still do your homework.
Okay, super. So the next question, let me get it here. I am trying to understand which user agents you're seeing most often in your experience. What is the majority user agent Imperva sees attacks from? Is it Mozilla, Firefox? Because from iOS and Android mobile browsers, they don't do much to mitigate.
I can take that one, Jim.
You can start. I've got some comments.
Sure. So if I gave you one answer, I would not necessarily do anything based on that answer, because user agents are so easy to change. And whatever I give you the answer from, it's a point in time answer. What I think you might find more interesting is Imperva's Bad Bot report. We release this report yearly, and it goes through and it breaks down exactly what we're seeing from the top bot identifiers in the traffic. It does it by vertical. It does it by industry or company size within that vertical. So that's kind of our de facto resource for answering that question, Ganesh. I
was going to say the one that you'll see the most traffic from is the one you're not blocking at the time. Because as soon as like John said, it's so easy for these guys to change the user agent strings. If you do start blocking one of them, then they'll start they'll change it. And I've been on calls with customers where we'll implement a change. We started blocking. In one case, they were coming from one version of Firefox that didn't exist, and so we started blocking that, and they started sending us random user agent strings, and so we started blocking those, and they changed it real quick. That being said, you'll often see like a Go HTTP or a curl for automation, but the downside is those are the guys that either aren't hiding what they're doing or they're not trying very hard. And so if you block those, it won't take them long to start to change that. The other thing is if you have any legitimate automation, right, that's hitting your website, you'll see a lot of times they're coming with a Go HTTP or a curl. And so you always want to make sure that you know what kind of traffic you have coming into that website. That's one of the nice things with ABP is we can turn it on and kind of run it in analysis only mode to figure out, hey, I'm seeing a bunch of traffic from this IP address. It looks like it's automated. We don't want to block it though, because we do a little investigation. Turns out that that's a partner, but advanced bot protection, even if you're not ready to start blocking yet, if you have it, we always recommend that you turn it on, because then you have that history to start investigating with.
And I will add one recommendation that's pretty bulletproof. If you don't have ABP, if you don't think you can get it anytime soon, but you do have a way to say write a regex rule, stopping traffic from really old browsers is pretty bulletproof. You can look for the date of release of browsers. I would say don't block anything newer than the, I think Firefox has like an extra stable release. Chrome might have the same thing. Anything older than those, I think is fair game to just to block or to challenge. But I wouldn't say a category of user agent is worth acting on in general.
Okay, that's great. So this, unless anyone else has more, oh, we've got another one, good, okay. So this is the second last question then. My question is about fraud root cause checking.
Yeah.
I would like better tracing across ATO and all the traffic. For example, I'd like to know what happened after a successful suspicious login, or what happened to a specific account or with a specific auth token.
Yeah. So I think the important thing to understand is if you're just looking from a Cloud WAF perspective, right? So if you just have Cloud WAF and ATO without the advanced bot protection, then that's a little bit of a challenge, because all that the Cloud WAF is going to show you is the security events. Right now, we let you download the full traffic. So if you want to put it into your SIM and do some of that research later on, you can do that. However, one of the nice things about ABP, the advanced bot protection, now again, for our Cloud WAF customers, you might have purchased the advanced bot protection package, but if you're only using account takeover, you're not getting the full tracking capabilities. That's why we recommend at least enabling the ABP. Even if you don't want to do the JavaScript injection, you just want to turn it on. That gives you a lot more reporting capabilities in terms of finding out, okay, what did this client ID do afterwards? You know, what was the full session history for this user, et cetera. John, I'll let you chime in on any tips or tricks there for following a user using ABP.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think it's a good feature request to think about. Show me everything that they at least. So inside of account takeover, you can go in and you can see the usernames that were compromised. And so it would be really useful, I think, if we went one more step and we said, download logs for this username after this successful login. That would be probably pretty useful. Everybody's a little bit different, so I don't think we could necessarily build like an interactive UI that you would see on like TV for it, right? But at least we could give you the logs for that were attached to that session, that user ID, something like that. and that, you might have them already on your side somewhere, but you as a practitioner might not have access to them, which is why it's useful for companies like us to open our logs and stuff like that.
Great. Another question here from Michael. I'm just going to make sure I'm getting it right here. Can you something the response sent back for ABP inside other policies in SecureSphere? Can you see maybe? Can you?
Oh, I'm guessing, Michael, that the question is, can you use the response coming back from ABP inside other policies in SecureSphere? So if ABP says this, then take this other step in SecureSphere. I don't think so, but we probably want to unpack that use case in particular for you, just because most of the time you can do what you want through the policy on the ABP side. Because remember, the policy at Imperva is where you decide if it's this client and if it's coming from this IP and if it's this rate and if it looks like they're using automation, et cetera, then we want to block or captcha. What ends up going back to the SecureSphere or to the on-premise is just, do we block it or do we not? Imperva is not supplying all of that information back about the policy, et cetera. That's stored on the Cloud Raft for you to look up and report on later.
Okie doke. I think that's us. Unless, John, have you anything to add to that, to Jim's answer there?
No, I would say if there's something that you find that SecureSphere can do for you that you can't do in the ABP policies, like let us know.
Yeah.
We'd love to add that functionality.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the user voice link, but it's not to hand at the moment. I'll add that to community, the user voice link, so that if anyone else wants to add any other thoughts on that as well, we can share that with them. Okay, well, I think, let me just double check the chat, but I think that's, one new question.
Just one more from Pete. Yeah. Do
you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that about custom responses and slowing the connection and stuff like that. We have current design partners that we're working with for that type of functionality. So in terms of slowing down the connection, keeping it open, trying to confuse attackers, we can definitely add you maybe to the design partner program, or at least let you know when that functionality is ready later this quarter. As far as alternate content, we can definitely allow you today to serve content from an alternate origin if there's automation found in the policy, but there's no configuring the content on our systems. It would have to just be served from another origin that you have.
And so if you're on Cloud Raft, you have the ability to write an in-cap or a rule based on the advanced bot protection outcome. So advanced bot protection might say, hey, I'm going to block this, or hey, I'm going to alert this. You can set up a custom, mess with them directive. And then you can write a rule in Cloud Raft that says, if the advanced bot protection directive is mess with them, then take this particular action. Now, we can't do every action. Like, I think we can rewrite the origin server, but we can't, there's some restrictions. We can send the docs out with Sarah, but yeah, you can use that directive to take some rule to take another action inside of Cloud Raft.
And I'll add that it is a popular strategy, but depending on the sophistication of your adversaries, it may not be useful for long. It's one thing to say, okay, I see the 403, I know I'm blocked. It's another thing to say, oh, that's weird. Seems my bot script always times out, but my normal web browser lets me through. You're still kind of giving away that you've caught them. So, but we do want to allow customers that flexibility. You can do even crazier things in the policy, like assign a random probability to mess with them as well. So you can say, if this condition is true and randomly 79% of the time, then do XYZ. So
That's one of my favorites because it's like it works sometimes. Why doesn't it work all the time?
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna have to call it a day there, guys. I'm so sorry to like cut you off. It has been absolutely brilliant to have you on here answering these questions, and thanks to the audience for keeping us on our toes. We've been frantically adding questions to a sheet in the background, so yeah. Really appreciate all of your questions, and if there's anything that is still a question after the fact, please do pop onto community, post it there, and we'll get another discussion going. It's always great to see you interact with each other and work out where you have similar questions and things like that. John and Jim, once again, absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for your time. We will hopefully get you on again for something similar. Jim, you're due on again in a couple of weeks, actually. So
yes, getting value out of Cloud Raft.
Yes.
So if you're a Cloud Raft customer and you want to make sure you're getting all the use you can out of that, come see that webinar. And Sarah, thanks for your effort too. We really appreciate it.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. See you all soon. Keep an eye on the other events coming up on community. Thanks for coming.